Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining Surviving the Deductible Season. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our presenters, Bruce and Joey.
Thank you so much, Sharon. We're very excited to be here today. I'm joined today with Bruce Gehring, and my name is Joey Graham. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Prochant. We are here today to talk to you guys about the deductible season, and it's hard to believe. It's already been a year, and we are up against another Q1. And of course, we all know what happens in Q1 in the industries that we serve. We run up against deductibles, right? So even though many people have health insurance that runs on maybe a different schedule due to their employer, maybe it's October through September like ours, but in general, deductibles are calendar year basis, right? So what ends up happening is every January 1st, all of our patients' deductibles flip over to zero, meaning especially if they have a high deductible plan, that until they meet that deductible in the new year, their insurance is not going to be issuing any payments. And of course, we are well aware of that, right? As providers, this is something that we deal with every single year, but there are some strategies that we can employ as we approach the deductible season. And that's what Bruce and I are here today to share with you. So Bruce, I'll let you introduce yourself real quick.
Sure. Thanks, Joey. My name is Bruce Gehring, Senior Vice President of Business Development at the Allegiance Group, and been in the healthcare industry since 2008. The Allegiance Group really specializes in patient pay, and boy, is that just a perfect subject matter for the deductible season. So we come face to face with this every year, like Joey said, and hopefully we'll provide some, insight and some tips perhaps that can help you strategize and handle the deductible season a little bit more effectively. Joey?
Thanks, Bruce. My name again is Joey Graham, and I am the Chief Revenue Officer at Prochant. We are the nation's leading HME and pharmacy reimbursement service. We work with providers all over the country and help them with their insurance, billing, and collections, both front office and back office. And so we really make the dream team when it comes to pairing up with Allegiance Group. They take care of the patient pay side of the house. We take care of the insurance side of the house. And of course, we work with our providers, and we have many providers who work with both of our companies and help them weather this deductible storm by employing some of the strategies we're going to be talking about today. So very excited to be here. My background is as a provider. I came up through the provider ranks. In fact, Prochant was my billing service before I came over to work for Prochant. So definitely excited to be here with you guys. Now, let's talk about today's agenda. We got a few things we're going to go through, and we want to keep this to 30 minutes. We want to respect your time. Hopefully you guys are able to grab some lunch while you're listening to this and get you out of here by about 12:30 Eastern. So we're going to be talking about the deductible dilemma and what that is, reviewing your collections policy, educating your patients, especially during intake, managing deductible holds in your billing system, managing payer changes as those roll through beginning of the year, capturing those credit cards, and finally payment plans and some strategies around how do we get these patients to pay up, especially when they get hit with a huge deductible bill, right? I mean, some of these deductibles are not inexpensive. So let's jump in real quick and let's talk about the deductible dilemma. Bruce, I'm going to hand it over to you to sort of set the ground for us.
You know what? I have a couple of slides that really kind of emphasize this. It's really what has happened in the last or recent history. And this graph really does a good job of depicting this, because you can see the difference in deductible plans. And this is really only dealing with employer-sponsored plans. But this is a great starting point, because when you take a look at this, you can see from 2009 to 2019 the change in the environment in deductibles. I mean, my gosh, going from like 33% of employees having a deductible over $1,000 or more to over 69% in 2019. And that's going to go higher as we get statistics in from 2020 and certainly this year. So it truly shows the shift of that responsibility to the patient. And we just did this with our company. And hey, guess what? Premiums aren't going down either, and the deductible's going up. So it's true across the board, and we've got to be able to deal with this. And it's got to be done in a way that doesn't impact your business or drags your cash flow. So that's what we're going to talk about. And in addition to that, you can take a look at this chart that just really kind of summarize medical debt in general, because you can see here that when you look at the average American, 26% Americans owe between $1,000 and $5,000 in medical debt. And if you look at the categories in the higher classifications, 41% over $5,000. That's a lot of money that, guess what? You're financing, because if you're not getting that money up front, you have to carry that until the deductible is met. And are you going to bill a deductible or not? You've got to consider this. We cannot, with higher deductibles, that season is extending itself, and it means if you're delaying that billing, oh my gosh, you're just dragging your DSO and your cash flow. And so that's really critical to take a look at. So where do you start with all of this? Well, we certainly think a good place to start is your collection policies and procedures. This is the best way to go ahead and manage the deductible season, is to identify the strategies that you want and put that into your policies and procedures, and make sure it's aligned with your organization mission and your billing workflow. It's critical. We recommend that you review your billing and collection policies at least annually, and that's important. And once you've established your policies and procedures, you need to assure your staff is well versed in the various scenarios that they're going to face, and they're all over the board. So you have to identify based on your demographics, your product mix, and certainly the plans that you support, what that deductible is going to be, how are you going to manage that, how do you address that with the patient so they understand their responsibility. And more importantly, your staff has to understand that, because they are going to be the ones that have to deal with this in the front line. And it's important that once you've established those billing and collection scenarios and you have your policies and procedures set, you've got to go ahead and train your staff on how to manage those things. And if they do a good job of that, how are you going to go ahead and evaluate the performance around that? Having your employees understand their responsibilities, it really comes down to tracking and monitoring their performance, and related to the standards that you've set. And if you are able to do that, and everybody knows what they need to do in what situation, you're going to handle, regardless of who's doing it, they're going to handle the situation the same way, regardless of who's managing that particular patient. And that's going to give you consistency across the board, and it's going to give you better customer service and fewer issues that you're going to have to deal with because of exceptions that are being made or something of that nature that are outside of your policies and procedures. So that's really the key thing here. Assure the best results by capturing the patient responsibility related to paying what they owe related to their deductibles, and them understanding it, and you delivering the message in a consistent way to get the best results. And Joey has some key points to share related to when it comes to educating patients at intake. Joey?
Appreciate it, Bruce. And before I proceed, I want to reflect a little bit on what you just shared with us, because I think it's really important, and I think it hits a lot of us really close to home. I mean, a lot of us have heard, for a long time that, the healthcare system in America is in many ways broken. And I think one of those major ways is the whole financial model and the way that this works. You said some things that just a minute ago that were just pretty big, right? So you had 41% of people owe more than $5,000, and 26% of people owe between $1,000 and $5,000. So you add that together, that's 67% of Americans, 2/3 of Americans owe more than $1,000 in medical debt. 2/3. Wow, right? I mean, that's just unbelievable. And you also have a note, Bruce, that 137 million US adults face financial hardship due to medical bills.
Yep.
And there's 200 million, I believe, American adults, something like that. So I think that's over 16 and older or something like that. But I mean, that it's proving out 2/3 of US American adults are struggling with paying medical bills and are even concerned about obtaining medical care because they're concerned about the bills that are going to ensue. So this is a very real problem, right? This hits us very close to home, and I bet many of us on the call have experienced this issue firsthand. So the answer is we've got to get in front of it, right? We've got to be proactive rather than reactive. We've got to get in front of it. We've got to give our patients options. That makes sense. But we've also got to stand firm that, you know, we can't not collect this, right? Because this is how we pay our bills. This is how we pay our staff. This is how we buy our products. And so it all starts with intake, right? The patient goes to their doctor, they go to the hospital, they get treatment, and they receive a prescription for some sort of HME, some sort of pharmaceutical, and that prescription, hopefully along with some supporting documents, makes its way over to you, to your company, to be filled. During your intake process, there is a critical process that a lot of times we call it insurance eligibility or insurance benefits. But this is where we have to figure out who's going to pay how much, right? And that's got to be figured out before we schedule this order to be filled. We've all had these conversations in our doctor's office. You know, you're in or out of network, your insurance is going to cover this much, you're going to be responsible for this remaining balance, which we estimate to be blank. This is that critical juncture. We have to let our patient know that our policy is to put a credit card on file or prepay these balances. So it's not, will you be making a payment today? It's, will that be Visa, MasterCard, Discover, or American Express? Unfortunately, right? And a lot of that has to do with kind of scripting that for your team so that this is not as uncomfortable, right? It's all about how we present the question and how we say things. You know, you've probably all heard you can say anything with a smile. So it's sort of down that road. But we have got to get that card on file, or we have to get some kind of payment up front. Otherwise, what I call the dump and chase model for patient collections, which is the problem that Allegiance Group fixes. If you're following the dump and chase model, which means we're going to dump a monthly invoice out there and we're going to hope someone pays it. And if they don't, we're just going to dump another one out the next month. That yields less than 50% payments. That's real. So if that's your model, imagine if you had a payer that only paid you half the time. Well, that's your patients. And that's your patients if you bill them in a traditional model. So you have to have a different model for billing patients that's more proactive and doesn't rely on them to pay a bill later. So as we move into sort of what are some strategies we can also employ in our billing system, in our insurance side of the house, to reduce the impact of deductible season. And one major one is called the deductible hold. So many providers swear by a deductible hold. Many providers are very much against the deductible hold as well. So providers are very much mixed in opinions on this matter, but those who believe in it strongly. And the core idea here is that we do a better job collecting from insurance companies than we do from patients. Like I just said, if we bill from patients, we're only going to 50%. At least if I'm billing an insurance company, I'm going to get 80, 90%, right? So that's the core idea, is I'm going to do a better job collecting money from insurance companies. So why don't I hold my claims temporarily and let other providers take that deductible hit? And then when I release my claims, those will actually be paid by the major medical insurance. So that's the core idea here. Now, before we go further, it's important to mention that you have to have some cash, you have to have some liquidity to weather this particular deductible hold storm. Because remember, this session's about avoiding a cash flow slump during deductible season. However, implementing a deductible hold will create a temporary cash flow slump. Obviously, right? You're going to hold claims. So this is something that's done purposefully and strategically, but it's certainly not inexpensive in the short term. As it relates to payers, your billing system may already have programming in place to manage a Medicare deductible hold. You can also do a deductible hold for other payers, but that's going to be a pretty manual process, but you can do it. So let's say you're working in a system that has a manual hold function. You can go click that manual hold box, create a manual hold reason that says deductible hold, put whatever claim you want on hold, whatever order you want on hold. But this is manual, right? Now, there is some technology you can use maybe to help you with that, but still, it's a very manual process. You definitely want to think your way through it. You should definitely closely and strategically set the parameters for your deductible hold. So, for example, many providers would release Medicare claims that had a Medicaid secondary payer attached, for example, because Medicaid generally don't have a deductible, and that claim is just going to cross over to Medicaid and pay. So that's pretty good. Also, Medicare has a very low deductible comparatively when you look at commercial plans, right? So maybe we don't hold for Medicare because the deductible's low, and we definitely don't hold if it's Medicaid as well. Medicare, Medicaid, Medi. Also, sometimes we don't hold high dollar claims. So if we've got a large claim, let's say a $20,000 power chair or some other, major medication, and you get to, you figure out where that line is. A lot of people's deductibles nowadays are $5,000, $6,000. So, but if you have a high dollar claim, then maybe it makes sense to get that thing out there. It'll take that deductible hit, but some will pay, and now you can go try to get that collected from the patient. You also want to consider the timing parameters. So when should I release my claims? Certainly you want to make sure you release your claims before they hit timely filing. You also might have a time or dollar threshold. For example, we're gonna check the deductible, the remaining deductible. Once the remaining deductible falls below $1,000, then we're gonna release our claims. So some providers have even gone that deep with the logic that they put around that deductible hold, because I think we all know when you hold claims, you're holding cash, right? So it's very strategic in terms of how you implement a deductible hold, but certainly you can have some really amazing results if you do that. Let's go to the next slide, Bruce, and talk a little bit about payer changes. So that's one other thing that comes up when we talk about deductible season, when we talk about Q1. A lot of times our patients do have calendar year medical plans, and so we do tend to have an uptick in January of payer changes, right? So one thing that's really important to do, I think, is that we start to run batch eligibility in January. And instead of reactively trying to address this when we get a denial for ineligible policy, if we run batch eligibility before we submit our claims, we can proactively reach out to these patients even before their billing date and say, hey, we see that your insurance changed. Before your January bill drops, we need to get your new insurance on file. So certainly you want to, again, try to get that done in advance of your recurring rental date so you can get new coverage in place before that January claim drops. Bruce, do you want to talk a little bit about capturing credit cards?
Yeah, I will, and I'm just gonna follow up on what you just said, Joey, because I think it's important to understand, when are we communicating these changes to our customers? And there are things that are built into your system that you can use to be proactive. A good example is in November, with your billing, have an insert or even the ability to go ahead and have special messaging put on your statements, notifying the patient that, please contact our office to update your insurance information so you can get those plans in place. So when you're doing the eligibility check, you're checking the right thing and you're not having an errant, claim go out to the wrong payer. So those are simple things that can be done, and you can do that a number of ways, whether it's statements, whether it be, phone calls. You can do automated calls very cheaply to cover your customer base, text messaging, e-statements, all that stuff. Understand where the patient is going to get their message from and communicate in the way that they prefer. And that's really, I think, also part of this when we're talking about proactivity. Now is the right time to do that. And then I'll just follow up on that. Once you hit deductible season, explain to the patient that, if you have the ability on your statements to show that it is due to a deductible or a copay or whatever, so they have a better understanding of why they're having to pay the bill. And even a message there saying this bill may be a result of having not met your deductible. So again, getting them to respond to you quicker is the key. Not letting them, procrastinate and drag your AR. That's really what you're trying to avoid. So as Joey said, the intake's critical. And I don't care if it's reoccurring charges for resupply, rental, or deductible. And deductible is what we're talking about today. Your policy needs to reinforce and support that so that you're going to submit the claim, and we require having a credit card or bank account on file to go ahead and charge whatever your responsibility is. And hopefully you're able to go ahead and get that estimate to them. And you have the policies and procedures in place so that if it ends up being different than what has been charged, you can credit it back and do those types of things so they're comfortable with how you're managing that process. But by golly, if you can get the credit card on file in a procedure set up for those reoccurring charges, the auto pays, the deductibles, then you're going to be light years ahead of that dump and chase model that Joey was explaining a few minutes ago. And with this, it's kind of looking at the technology you have available, because one of the biggest problems we have as providers is that you got to stay up on making sure that you have active credit cards and they haven't expired. So when you go to charge them, they decline. So even looking at your processing services to see if they can offer you that ability to go out and ping those accounts for new credit cards that are active for that account, and they can be imported into your system to continue that that process of charging the credit card uninterrupted. And certainly if you can do it in an automated way, hallelujah, because now you're not having to chase that, another phone call, another trying to chase down the patient to get a new credit card on file. And then along with that, that's kind of leads into making it easy for patients to pay. The key there is, and let's go back to customer satisfaction. If you can take away the barriers and the insecurity around the not understanding what's going to be charged to their credit card and when, then that's going to make it so much easier for you to establish a payment period for that particular patient. If they know that they're getting paid on the 15th or the 1st or the 30th of the month, then align their account to be charged at that time when they know they have money in the bank, or credit on their credit card. So they can manage that process. And, are you again going back to the ways that you communicate with the patient to let them know that their credit card or their bills are available to view online so they can self-manage. Self-managing themselves is a huge benefit. And again, it eliminates those people having to go ahead and call your office to ask the questions, take up your time, and you're talking about maybe a copay or deductible. You're trying to explain why this is all being applied to their deductible. It just makes it so much easier. So look at the automations available to you within your system, and go for it. I mean, you just got to go ahead and think about how to communicate effectively, and then put those processes in place that's going to capture those credit cards and all of that upfront, so you're not chasing. You don't do the dump and chase. And the process of looking at making it easy for patients to pay means, I mean, if you've identified that maybe somebody does have a $5,000 deductible, what are you going to do about that? Okay, well, let's establish a way for them to pay. Not wait, let's get a payment plan in place. Do you have a way to do that easily? And again, that can be self-managed within your patient payment portal too. But that's really the key. Getting to pay something so you've got that cash coming in. May not be all at once, but you can certainly go ahead and set up parameters. You know, if it's less than $1,000, maybe you allow up to 3 payments, you know, for 3 monthly payments. Who knows? But you can determine based on your cash flow, your needs, you know, what you're going to allow to carry that debt on behalf of the patient. But golly, if you can get them set up on a payment plan, have that done automatically, now again, you're not doing the dump and chase. And the proactive communication we already talked about, but you know, being able to communicate with patients the way they prefer. You know, if you've got their cell phone number, you can do text notifications. If you got their email address, you can do e-notifications. All of this is instantaneous. So when the bill is available to see, they know it's available to see and they can act on it now, not wait for the mail to get to them and then turn around and send a check back in the mail. And again, that drags your DSO another 15, 20 days. So let's do this wisely and try to get the patient to pay immediately whenever possible. And you know, hey, if you do have you know, issues where people are in, you know, dire straits, obviously COVID, everything that we're faced with today, you know, consider some discounts. You know, if they can pay in full, do you have some settlement authority that you give your people to go ahead and get them to pay? Anything you can do to speed up that cash recovery is going to be money in the bank and certainly lead to better bottom line dollars.
Absolutely.
That,
I want to jump in really quick, Bruce, if
yeah.
I can say couple thoughts. One, about making it easier for patients to pay you. Maybe we need to be a little more creative in what we accept in terms of payment. So I know I'm not going to recommend you start taking crypto, although, but you know, you allow your patients to pay through a mobile device. Like, can they pay you through Apple Pay? Can they pay you through PayPal? Do you have a PayPal account? You know, I think that the world has changed quite a bit in the last 5-10 years. And there's a lot more payment channels out there than the traditional, you know, Amex or Visa or, you know, personal check, right? So that's one thing, is have we really considered all the various channels, and especially looking at our patient base and what they use and what's going to be easier for them to pay us. Another one is think about payment options like care credit or something like that, where a financial institution takes on the risk instead of you. And you go ahead and get paid, and now the patient's going to have a small loan with care credit, and they're going to pay a small interest, and they're going to pay them over the months instead of you. So that would be maybe another option to consider in terms of just making it easier to pay and giving our patients options, because I think that's the real key here. Is we've got to give them options. We've got to meet them halfway instead of just maybe taking this hard stance, right? One other thing I would mention is a lot of providers handle deductible season a little differently in terms of what happens during cash posting when you get those deductible EOBs. So here's what I mean. Normally, what we do is, let's say it's the middle of August or something, and we just got a new patient, and we get the EOB in, and it's been set to deductible, right? So we got a zero payment. So now we're going to go ahead and post that zero, and we're going to transfer the balance to the patient's responsibility. And we're going to let the current patient collections process handle it, whatever that means. Hopefully you're using something like Allegiance Group, which means they're going to get an invoice within a week. They're going to get follow-up calls. They're going to be escalated. They're going to be moved to collections if they don't pay it. Or maybe it's just going to that dump and chase we keep talking about. We're just going to send them a statement once a month for the next year and hope that they pay it at some point. But what some providers do is during deductible season specifically, they have like a special workflow process where, let's say, for example, you run a report of all the deductibles posted yesterday, and you have somebody assigned to go in and contact those patients right away. Let them know that it dropped to deductible, give them all these options we've been talking about, try to get that credit card updated, give them options like care credit and other things, offer them a payment plan, you know, proactively try to get that collected instead of just letting it fall into the regular collections process. A lot of providers will do that. So that's something to consider. Now, that's obviously a manual process, but I think it's something that a lot of providers have seen success with. And it certainly speaks to being proactive rather than reactive.
Well
All right,
said.
well, I think we are at the end of our time. Any last minute thoughts, Bruce?
You know what? I think you just summed it up very, very nicely. And, everything that we talked about here today, hopefully there's some little nuggets that you can take back and look at what you're doing and apply those things to get better results. And certainly contact us if you need assistance at all in anything. Joey, obviously from a standpoint of looking at those claim processing processes, just like he talked about, oh my gosh, use them. I mean, that's the other thing that we're running into here is resources, because, we're trying to get people to do these jobs. And if you have manual processes in place, and you don't have the people to do them, you're lost. So you need to make sure that if you don't have the resources or the expertise, call on your partners. I mean, we're here to help. So please think about us if you're needing those types of services or are challenged with any of the stuff that we talked about today.
And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I know we're at the end of the 30 minutes and we want to be respectful of your time. So thank you all so much. Let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you.